You wait a minute, wait a minute, because I can't.
So, very good evening to one and all once again on the second day of this International Faculty Development Program on Research Methodology, Tools and Techniques. Today, we have Professor Rania Lampou from Greece with us, and she will throw the light on the topic qualitative research design and research methods. So, without wasting time, I would like to request Dr. Aarti Chopra, Joint Secretary of Inspira Research Association, to welcome our today's resource person, Professor Rania Lampou. Dr. Aarti Chopra.
Thank you, Professor Ravikant Modi. A very good evening to all of you. A special good evening to Rania Lampou ma'am and Professor S.S. Modi, Professor Anil Mehta. I can see all the executive members here on this platform. I would like to greet everyone here. So I wish to welcome all of you once again to the second day of 1 week long International Faculty Development Program on Research Methodology, Tools and Techniques, being organized by Nirwan University, Jaipur and powered by Inspira Research Association. Today, we have Professor Rania Lampou with us, who is a global educator, STEM instructor, Greek Astronomy and Space Company. She works at Greek Astronomy and Space Company at Greece. She has been kind enough to accept our invitation and joined us as a resource person today. She'll be talking about a very, very important aspect in research, that is the qualitative research designs and research methods. Of lately, we have been talking about quantitative tools for research, but in a vast country, in a huge country like India, qualitative research has its own value and significance. So, to throw a light on a very significant aspect of research, that is the qualitative aspect of research, let me invite Professor Rania, but before that, I would like to throw a little light on her academic journey. Professor Rania is ICT teacher trainer. She's a neuroeducation researcher, international speaker, author, and global peace ambassador. As I told you, she works at Greek Astronomy and Space Company, and also the Greek Ministry of Education, Directorate of Educational Technology and Innovation, where she writes STEM projects for Greece school children. Global Teacher Award she has received for continuous 3 years, that is 2019, 20 and 21. She has been in top 10 women entrepreneur featured in Fortune. She has been in top 10 CEO by DigiSharks and Indian Alert. She has also been a part of 30 Shining Stars of the World. She promotes STEM education in astronomy and physics projects. She's the founder and coordinator of many international projects that focus on sustainable development goals. She is also the advisor and member to various institutions related to physics, science, STEM education, global peace, and women education. So, and also she's a social activist and editorial member of many national and international journals. We are so glad to have you here, ma'am. We welcome you with smiles on our face, with open arms. So we have Professor Rania Lampou from Greece with us, who will be talking about qualitative tools and techniques of research. Welcome, ma'am.
Welcome, Professor Rania. Welcome.
Warm greetings from Greece. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. First, I would like to congratulate all the organizers for setting up this very significant, very important International Faculty Development Program. And of course, I would like to thank Inspira, the Research Association, as well as Nirwan University for the kind invitation. Today, we will explore the huge but very dynamic field, and as you said, overlooked of qualitative research, the types of quality research designs or the methods, approaches, the AI tools that we can utilize, some ethical guidelines, and at the end, we can discover a different aspect, but very interesting, of documents as social artifacts, an aspect which is not usually presented in webinars. It's something rare, something new, very original. So we have a lot to say. I hope we'll manage the time. I will share my presentation if it's possible. Wait a minute. Is it visible now?
Yes, Professor. It's visible.
Can you see also the change of slides?
It is not changed. Yes, yes. Now it's okay. Fine.
You can see the change also.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, thank you. So when we start talking about research designs, is this strategy for answering your research question. Usually, when we create a research design, it means that we make decisions about our overall research objectives and approaches, whether we want to utilize primary or secondary research data, whether our sampling methods or criteria, how this would be, what methods we will utilize for selecting subjects, our data collection methods, of course, the procedure we're going to follow to collect data, and our data analysis methods. This is more or less how a research design should be. Now, research, qualitative research is a type of research that actually explores and offers deeper insights into real-world problems. So instead of collecting numerical data points or intervening or introducing treatments, just like in quantitative research, qualitative research helps generate hypotheses in order to further investigate and understanding quantitative data. So qualitative research actually gathers participants' experiences, perceptions, and behaviors. It answers the how and whys instead of how many and how much, and it will be structured whether as a standalone study, purely relying on qualitative data, or part of a mixed methods research that combines qualitative and quantitative data. Qualitative research asks actually open-ended questions whose answers are not easily put in numbers, such as how and why, as said before. And due to this open-ended nature, qualitative research design is often not linear like a quantitative design. One of the strengths of this type of research is its ability to explain processes and patterns of human behavior that can be difficult to quantify. Phenomena such as experiences or attitudes and behaviors can be complex. You know about this. And this means that there is a complexity to capture accurately and quantitatively. In contrast, a qualitative approach allows participants themselves to explain how, why, or what they're thinking, how they're feeling and experiencing at a particular time or during an event or interest. So quantifying qualitative data certainly is possible, but at its core, qualitative data is looking for themes, is looking for patterns that can be difficult to quantify. So as I said before, it's something that it can function as a standalone research design or can be combined with quantitative research to enhance our study correlato. It uses techniques that we're going to see later, structure and structure interviews, focus groups, participant observation, but not only just to help generate hypotheses that can be more rigorously tested with quantitative research, but also to help researchers delve deeper into the quantitative numbers, research numbers, understand what they mean, and understand what the implications are. So qualitative research more or less allows researchers to understand what is going on, especially when things are not easily categorized. We can say that qualitative research is not an island apart from quantitative research. It's an integral part of research methods to understand the world. What are the characteristics of this method? First of all, if we talk about design strategies, the first characteristic is naturalistic inquiry. This means that the researcher studies real-world situations as they unfold naturally in a non-manipulative and non-controlling way, being open to whatever emerges. There is a lack of predetermined constraints or findings here. Secondly, emerging design flexibility with openness to adapting the inquiry as understanding deepens or situations change. The researcher avoids getting locked into rigid designs that eliminate responsiveness and pursues new paths of discovery as they emerge. What we call purposeful sampling cases for studying, for example, for communities, organizations, cases for study are selected because they are informationally rich and illuminative. Therefore, they offer useful manifestations of the phenomenon of interest. Sampling is aimed at insight about the phenomenon, not empirical generalization from a sample to a population. Another set of characteristics have to do with data strategies. So qualitative data consists of observations that yield, that offer detailed, thick description, inquiry in depth, interviews that capture direct quotations about people's personal perspectives and experiences, case studies, careful document review. Personal experience and engagement, because the researcher has direct contact and can get close to the people, to situations and phenomena understanding. So the researcher's personal experiences and insights are an important part of the inquiry and critical to understanding the phenomenon. Here is important, especially when we conduct in social sciences, participant observation, overt and covert research. This is very interesting. Empathetic neutrality and mindfulness, because researchers adopt an empathetic stance in the viewing. They try actually to understand without judgment. So neutrality by showing openness, sensitivity, respect, awareness, responsiveness. In observation, this means that we need to be fully present. It means this entails what we call mindfulness. Dynamic systems, because attention is paid to process. Researcher assumes change is ongoing, because the focus is on an individual, an organization, a community, or an entire culture. Therefore, the researcher is mindful and attentive to system and situation dynamics. Analysis strategies. A unique case orientation, when a researcher assumes that each case is special and unique. So the first level of analysis is being true to respecting and capturing the details of individual cases being studied. Cross-case analysis follows from and depends on the quality of individual case studies. Inductive analysis and creative synthesis, because researchers seek immersion in the detail and specifics of the data, specifics of the data in order to discover important patterns, themes, and interrelationships. So researchers begin by exploring, then confirming. They're guided by analytical principles rather than rules, and study ends with a creative synthesis. Holistic perspective, the whole phenomenon understanding is understood as a complex system that is more than the sum of its parts. So the focus is on complex interdependencies and system dynamics that cannot meaningfully be reduced to a few discrete variables and linear cause-effect relationships. Another important feature is what we call context sensitivity. Because researchers place findings in a social, historical, and temporal context, and they're careful about the possibility on meaningfulness of generalization across time and space. So emphasizes instead careful comparative case analysis and extrapolating patterns for possible transferability to and adaptation in new settings. Finally, voice perspective flexibility, because the qualitative analyst owns its reflective, and he's actually reflective about his or her own voice and perspective. A credible voice conveys authenticity always and trustworthiness. Complete objectivity being impossible and pure subjectivity undermining credibility. So the researcher's focus is on balance, understanding and depicting the world authentically in all its complexity without being self-analytical, politically aware and reflexive in consciousness. So what the advantages, more or less, of qualitative research? Of course, it's about flexibility because the data collection analysis process can be adapted as new ideas or patterns emerge. Of course, we talk about natural settings because data collection here occurs in real-world contexts or in naturalistic ways. There are meaningful insights because detailed descriptions of people's experiences, feelings, or perceptions can be used in designing, testing, or improving systems of products. And generation of new ideas because open-ended responses mean that researchers can uncover novel problems or opportunities that they wouldn't have thought of otherwise. If you ask me about disadvantages, then we could say that sometimes there's the unreliability. Why? Because the real-world setting often makes qualitative research unreliability because there are uncontrolled factors that affect the data. This is, of course, a certain degree of subjectivity. When we analyze and interpret data, qualitative research cannot be replicated. So why? Because the researcher decides what it is important, what is irrelevant in data. So interpretations can vary in a vast degree. Limited generalizability, because small samples are often used to gather detailed data about a specific context. And it is difficult, of course, when with qualitative data to draw generalizable conclusions because the data may be biased or unrepresentative of the wider population. And some say this, some experts believe that it's labor intensive because although software can be used to manage and record large amounts of text, data analysis often has to be checked or performed manually. So when to use qualitative research designs and methods? A qualitative research is explanatory and is used when the researcher has no idea what to expect. So it is used to delve deeper into issues of interest. Qualitative data adds the details. It can also give a human voice to our results. So we can use this type in order to, if we want to do in-depth interviews, if we want to analyze issues affecting focus groups, if we want uninterrupted observation and ethnographic participation. If we want to get a detailed understanding of a particular topic, then we have, for example, typically we use small groups in order to gather in-depth data from various perspectives. And this, when we, of course, we want to define the problem or develop and approach this problem, and we want to develop a hypothesis for testing in a quantitative study, when we want to add the context to the results of a quantitative study, if we want to identify customer needs, if we talk about a business organization, or develop a new feature. So this approach is actually only effective in for some types of studies. For types of study, for instance, a qualitative approach wouldn't work for a study that seeks to understand a statistically relevant finding. So when defining if a qualitative research design is appropriate, remember the goal of qualitative research is understanding the why. So qualitative research design gathers in-depth information that stands on its own. It can also answer the why, as I said before, of quantitative study. And this way it can be the precursor to forming a hypothesis. Um, so this is now the design process and all the steps that are very important to have in mind and to follow when you going to implement your design process. So this process typically involves several key steps. First of all, when we identify the research question, start by providing a concise statement that outlines your research question or objective. What do you want to explore or understand through your qualitative research? Ensure that the question is specific, is focused, and relevant to your field of study. Secondly, develop a research approach, because we need here to select the most appropriate qualitative research approach or design based on your research question and objectives. So we need to consider the different types of qualitative research design, such as phenomenology, ethnography, ground theory. We're going to explore about this later. They're very important to know. And choose which research design aligns with your research goals. Then develop a research plan, create a research plan that outlines steps, procedures, and timeline for your study, identify the target population of participants, data collection methods, data analysis techniques that we tend to use. After you select participants, so determine the criteria for selecting participants who can provide valuable insights related to your research questions. So consider factors such as demographics or expertise, experiences, or specific characteristics relevant to your study. And then you choose a sampling method that would be a proposed sample, to be a snowball sample. We want to see about this to recruit participants. Later, you collect data, conduct data collection using the chosen qualitative method. So this may involve conducting interviews, observations, focus groups, or document analysis. So to maintain, of course, ethical standards, it is crucial to adhere to ethical guidelines. We're going to see about this later, and ensure that participants provide informed consent. Consider audio or video recording to ensure accurate data capture. I want to say here something about ethics. Of course, we're going to discuss about later, but I want to say something about ethical dilemmas. For example, if you want to conduct a study in social sciences and you want to use also some AI tools, you want to utilize data from social media, from profiles of social media. The information, all the information that we're going to find from social media, of course, they're public, they're publicly displayed. But is it ethical to use private information? Yes, it is publicly displayed, but it's about private information. So what is happening? Is it ethical or unethical? There are so many ethical dilemmas that you're going to face or encounter throughout your research journey. And in this case, especially we talk nowadays about technology, because AI is accused for biases, for privacy issues when it comes to data. You need always to be in contact with the ethics committee of your institution, your university, or the journal if you want to submit a paper. And what I'm saying always that beyond ethical codes, there are what we call ethical values. So you need to take into consideration always ethical values. For example, another issue, if we want to conduct a research among a covert research among drug dealers. Of course, drug dealers won't give you, or drug users won't give you informed consent. So what is happening? It is ethical to conduct a research there. How the questionnaires, how the interviews, how all this will be conducted. So many ethical dilemmas and challenges that we're going to face and need to have in mind. So here we can see some methods, qualitative research methods. This focuses on describing individual experiences and beliefs. On the other hand, if we talk about quantitative research methods, we focus on describing the characteristics of population. Qualitative means open-ended questions. For quantitative, closed-ended questions. For qualitative, we use semi-structured methods such as in-depth interviews or focus groups or participant observation. On the other hand, for quantitative, we use structured methods, questionnaires and surveys. And in qualitative research methods, we produce descriptive data. On the other hand, numerical data, if we talk about quantitative, and the degree of flexibility in qualitative participant response affect how and which questions researchers ask next. On the other hand, with quantitative research, participant responses do not influence how and which questions researchers ask next. So the first step is to consider your objectives, which approach you want to use. So for qualitative, you need to understand subjective experiences, beliefs, and concepts to gain depth knowledge of a specific context, to explore under-research problems and generate new ideas. It's very important. On the other hand, if you follow a quantitative approach, then you need to measure different types of variables, how to test the hypothesis about relationships between variables and test the effectiveness of a new program or product. Always to have in mind some practical and ethical considerations, as I said before, how much time we have to collect data, will we be able to have access to the data we need. Maybe there is they need to travel to a specific location or contact with a particular people. Do you have the necessary research skills, for example, statistical analysis or interview techniques? Will you need ethical approval? I mentioned before about informed consent, which is necessary. So for the qualitative research example, if you wanted to generate new ideas for online, for example, teaching strategies, the qualitative approach would make the most sense. You can use this type of research to explore exactly, for example, what teachers and students are struggling with in remote classes, to give an example. On the other hand, if you want to test the effectiveness on an online teaching method, a quantitative approach is more suitable. So you can use this type of research to measure learning outcomes like grades and scores. At each stage, of course, of the research design process, make sure that the choices are practically feasible, of course. So secondly, you choose the type of research design you want, qualitative or quantitative. Some differences here. Qualitative research designs are more flexible and more inductive because they allow to adjust your approach based on what you find throughout the research process. On the other hand, quantitative research designs tend to be more fixed and deductive, with variables and hypotheses clearly defined in advance of data collection. And of course, there is always a possibility to use a mixed methods design that integrates aspects of both approaches. So by combining qualitative and quantitative insights, you can gain, of course, a more complete picture of the problem you're studying, and you can strengthen this way the credibility of your conclusions. Some types, if we talk about the quantitative research designs, I just mentioned this, of course, you know, I guess, about the experimental designs, because they allow us to test the cause and effect relationships. Descriptive and correlation designs allow us to measure variables and relationships between them. Here you can see what is happening with experimental. Subjects are randomly assigned to groups, remember this, and usually conduct, of course, in a controlled environment. They used to test the causal relationships. And quasi-experimental here involves comparing the outcomes of pre-existing groups it's similar to experimental design, but without random assignment. This is difference. It's often conducted in a natural environment, higher ecological validity, as we say. Correlational is another type of design used to test whether and how strongly variables are related. Variables are measured without influencing them, and descriptive when variables are measured without influencing them. So when we describe characteristics, trends, etc. Experimental research is quantitative research method. Usually, non-experimental research can be both quantitative and qualitative, depending on the time and the situation. An example of a non-experimental research is what I said before about correlational research. With descriptive and correlation designs, you can get a clear picture of characteristics of trend relationships as they exist in the real world. For example, we talk about correlational design that I mentioned. You could use a correlational design to find out if the rise in online learning in the past year correlates with any change in test scores. But this design can't confirm a causal relationship between two variables. So any change in test scores have been influenced by many other variables, such as increased stress or health issues among students and teachers. So here we see that experiments are the strongest way to test the cause-effect relationships without the risk of other variables influencing the results. However, of course, their controlled situations or conditions may not always reflect how things work in the real world. They're often also more difficult and expensive sometimes to implement. For the experimental design example, here we can gather a sample of students. We can randomly assign half of them to be taught online and the other half to be taught in person while controlling all other relevant variables. By comparing here the outcomes and test scores, you can be more confident that it was the method of teaching and not other variables that caused any change in scores. Usually the typical steps in non-experimental research are similar to the steps in experimental research. So the researcher defines the research problem hypothesis to be tested, then selects the variables that we're going to use. The researcher collects actually the data, after it analyzes the data, and then it interprets the results of data. So researchers specifically define whether the hypotheses are supported, and they typically explore the data to generate additional hypotheses to be tested in future studies. It is important here to say that the researcher follow the steps when conducting non-experimental research in order to avoid what we call a post hoc fallacy. Maybe you have heard about this. This post hoc fallacy or what we call post hoc ergo propter hoc in English. This means after this, therefore, because of this. When we engage in this post fallacy, means that if, for example, we argue the fact that because A preceded B must have caused B. For example, just because one thing comes before another does not mean that the first thing was causally relevant to the second. And this is just what the post fallacy claims. It is a classic but reasoning. And you have in mind all the techniques of control in non-experimental research, how to design a strong non-experimental research. We all know that the third variable problem is usually present in non-experimental research. So this means that the threat of confounding extraneous variables is virtually always present in this kind of research. So we need to know some major techniques that you can use in order to control these extraneous variables in non-experimental research. The appropriate use of these control techniques can help you improve the rigor and credibility of your research. You should upgrade evaluation of non-experimental research studies that use these techniques. And of course, if you are planning to conduct a non-experimental study, you should include one or more of these techniques as part of your study research design. First of all, is what we call statistical control. Is the most commonly used technique for controlling extraneous variables in non-experimental research. Here I need to clarify extraneous variable. It's anything that is not the independent variable that has the potential to affect the results. This is extraneous variable. It can be a natural characteristic of the participants. That could be intelligence level, it could be gender or age. That could be something else. That could be lighting or noise. So when statistically controlling for one or more extraneous variables, the researcher uses a statistical technique to remove the influence of this. Most techniques of this are spin-offs of a mathematical procedure called the general linear model. Is the parent of many statistical techniques that are used in education. And also, we can mention here a partial correlation when we try here to when we use it when we want to examine the relationship between quantitative variables controlling for one or more quantitative variables. Why it's called this? Because the effect of the third variable is removed from the initial relationship. So the third step, then we identify a population sampling method. This means that a research design should be clearly defined for what the research will focus on. So I need to think about sample sources, sample size, how the sample was selected. You have to decide about whether you use probability sample or no probability sample. Probability sampling refers to the selection of a sample from population when the selection is based on the principle of randomization. So random here, randomization. It's a very common form for public opinion studies, for election polling and other studies. When we talk about wider population, usually. And on the other hand, no probability sample is when a sample is created through a non-random process. This could include researchers sending, for example, a survey link to their friends, or when we stop people on the street. This type of sample would also include any targeted research that intentionally samples from specific lists, such as participants in a specific training course, etc. No probability samples are often used during the exploratory stage of a research project, and it's qualitative research, which is more subjective, of course, than quantitative research, but also used for research with specific target populations in mind, such as, for example, farmers that grow maize or any other target group. So when we talk about no probability sampling methods, this type is easier to access. It has, of course, a higher risk of sample biases. If you want to use it, you need to make it representative of the population. And these techniques are often used in exploratory and qualitative research. We talk about no probability sampling. In these types of research, of course, here we don't care about to test the hypothesis about the broad population, but we are interested in developing an initial understanding of a small or under-researched population. Some types or no probability sampling has to do with convenience sample, a snowball quota sample. I'm going to explain all that. So we have here some categories, some types, proposing sampling. Here is the first one, when we try to take into consideration when we intentionally select participants based on their characteristics or knowledge, experience, or some other criteria. Criteria of sampling, when we are based on pre-identified factors, means select individuals or cases based on specific criteria that are relevant to the research question. This method, of course, allows researchers to focus on a specific subgroup of the population that is of interest, rather than selecting participants randomly. Convenience sampling, when convenience sampling involves recruiting individuals primarily because they're available, so willing or easy to access or contact on a practical level. Snowball sampling, when the selection is, of course, is no probability sample technique where existing study subjects recruit future subjects from among their acquaintances. So when the selection is by referral from other participants who know potential participants. Extreme case sampling targeted for selection of rare cases, and typical case sampling when selection is based on regular or average participants. So sampling procedures, you need to take consideration these questions. How many participants do you need for sample size? What inclusion exclusion criteria will you use to identify the participants? How will you contact your sample, by mail, by online or phone? Each of these procedures has its advantages and disadvantages. You can't say that this is best than one than another. Each of these has, as I said before, its drawbacks and advantages. After we need to choose data collection methods. I forgot to say that, of course, we can use sampling methods at the same time. So what we call multi-sampling, and this is, of course, based on our objectives of our research. Sometimes we start with random, then to make it sampling more data-oriented, we can choose quota sampling or any other method to reach the desired level, the desired sampling. So data collection methods are ways of directly measuring variables, how we gather information. Of course, this helps us to gain first-class knowledge, original insights into a research problem. You can choose, of course, one data collection or method, or use several methods in the same study. Qualitative, here you can see some methods, qualitative data collection tools, online forums, depth interviews, online communities, groups, web survey chats. On the other hand, quantitative data collection tools, face-to-face, online, mail, or phone. For survey methods or qualitative research actually uses several techniques, including, said before, interviews, focus group. Interviews may be unstructured, with open-ended questions on a topic, and the interviewer adapts to the responses. Structured interviews have a predetermined number of questions that every participant is asked. It is usually one-on-one, appropriate for sensitive topics or topics needing to in-depth exploration. Focus groups are often held with 8 to 12 target participants and are used when the group dynamics and collective use on a topic are desired. Researchers can be participant observers to share the experiences of the subject, or no participants or detached observers. While quantitative research prescribes, as I said before, a control environment for data collection, qualitative data collection may be in a central location of environment, depending on the study goals and design. So qualitative research would amount to a large amount of data. Data is transcribed, then may be coded manually or using computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software like Atlas D, we're going to see later. And after the coding process, qualitative research results could be in various formats. It could be a synthesis and interpretation presented with excerpts from the data. Results also could be in the form of themes and theory or model development. So survey methods allows us to collect data about opinions, about behaviors, about experiences, characteristics. How? By asking people directly. There are two main survey methods to choose from: questionnaires and interviews, and about observation also, qualitative and quantitative. Here you can see some differences. Questionnaires are more common in quantitative research. Interviews are more common in qualitative. As I said before, close and edit the questions. Interviews usually allow participants to answer in their own words. And for questionnaires, there are consistent data collected by many people. On the other hand, for interviews, ideas can be explored in depth with a smaller group, a focus group. What is focus group? A focus group is best designed as a small group of carefully selected participants who contribute to open discussions for research. Here If you're interested about qualitative research, you need to know the consolidated criteria for reporting qualitative studies. It covers the reporting of studies using interviews and focus groups. It is the only reported guidance for qualitative research to have received other than isolated endorsement, although it applies to only a few of the many qualitative methods in use. The checklist was developed to promote explicit and comprehensive reporting of interviews and focus groups. It consists of 32 criteria. You can find this. There is also a description to supplement each item. And of course, it is crucial that researchers provide sufficient detail on their methods of data analysis and the relationship between the analysis and the findings in the research report. The step when we plan our data collection procedures, here you need to know to have in mind actually 3 terms: accuracy, reliability, and validity. What are the differences between them? Reliability, we think about does this measure capture the same concept consistently over time? It is replicable. This means, does it produce the same results in different contexts? Do all questions measure the exact same concept? On the other hand, with validity, we think about, do our measurement materials test all the aspects of the concept, so content validity? Does this correlate with different measures of the same concept, criteria of validity? So if you want to clarify these terms, you have in mind that accuracy refers to how close a measurement is true to a value, an accepted value, of course. Reliability refers to the consistency of the set of measurements. So as I said before, reliable data means that they are replicable, that can reproduce under the same conditions. And validity refers to how well an experiment investigates or tests the underlying hypothesis. Usually, experiments that produce accurate results are likely to be valid, as invalid experiments usually do not offer accurate results. Some steps for quantitative data validation for the process, you need to have in mind about fraud, of course, screening, make sure that respondents were choosing other research criteria, the procedure to check whether data collection procedure was followed, and the completeness, also ensure that the interviewer asked the respondent all the questions. So decide on the data analysis strategies. We talked about this. It is one is more objective, one more subjective. Here we ask the qualitative why, on the other hand, the how many, how often. Contextual insights from small and medium sample size and qualitative, large sample sizes, so quick answers in the quantitative data analysis. Something very important we talk about qualitative research that you need to know is triangulation. But before this, I forgot to mention about data management, that it's important to create a data management plan for organizing and storing your data. Will you need to subscribe interviews or perform data entry for observations? You should, for example, anonymize and safeguard any sensitive data and make sure it's backed regularly, or keep your data well organized. This will save time when it comes to analyzing it. Can also help other researchers validate and add to your findings. This is what we call high replicability. So what is happening with here with the triangulation? Researchers use various methods to increase the validity of their conclusions. So triangulation is one method that researchers commonly use to answer a research question accurately. Learning about triangulation, of course, will help you conduct valid, reliable, and credible studies that adhere, of course, to research standards. So this is the process of using multiple research methods and perspectives to study a particular topic. The researcher can refine their ideas, find new ways of understanding or interpreting a particular behavior, for example. So triangulation can validate the researcher's findings, can ensure accuracy, and it also helps to prevent the confirmation biases. You know what it's about, confirmation biases. Mainly used in qualitative research, triangulation involves the use of multiple data sets or methods in research. So researchers often add triangulation to the study to document their comprehensive evaluation analysis of the data. And of course, this approach can strengthen the validity of the research because it can check the errors in interpretation through the use of multiple methods and perspectives. So why it's important, this triangulation research? Because it allows researchers to validate the research by comparing their ideas or studies with other people's research. So this allows researchers to compare evidence with other research. This increases the credibility. We can gain more understanding. When we use multiple sources, we can gain more understanding of the research question. So this can lead to more insight of discovery since we draw data from different sources. Of course, we talk about reduced data, reduced bias, because when we use several methods or theories or data sets, this can help us reduce the likelihood or including our own bias in our conclusion. So this way, when we have multiple perspectives, this means that we can present a holistic answer to our research question. Some types of triangulation in research, so this first of all data. Triangulation, this is a process of checking data by comparing results obtained from multiple sources. The theory triangulation, very interesting when we use different multiple theoretical models to study a particular phenomenon. So this can help you resolve the data contradictions. Methodological triangulation, here it's a process of using multiple methods of data collection. So it can help you refine the study by identifying gaps or inconsistencies. We know that researchers use this type of triangulation most often. And of course, this way we combine here qualitative and quantitative methods at the same time when we use methodological triangulation. Scales triangulation, most common in quantitative research because it provides a way for researchers to check the results. So it's about using multiple scales when we try to evaluate the same issue or behavior. External validity triangulation, the process of comparing diverse data sets, results of research methods about a particular issue or topic. Internal validity triangulation, when we compare diverse data sets and results, so in order to find differences that show weaknesses or inconsistencies. And proximity triangulation, when research study events or behaviors close in time to each other. So here we can compare similar events throughout a specific period without having to move from one source to another. So data analysis, to talk about data analysis in quantitative research, we need to find the patterns we want this. Usually, a word-based technique is the most relied and widely used global technique for research and data analysis. For example, while we study data collected from African countries, to understand the most pressing issues facing there, researchers might find food and hunger are the most commonly used words and will highlight them for further analysis. This is word-based technique. Second pattern, what we call keyword context. This is another widely used word-based technique. In this method, the researcher tries to understand the concept by analyzing the context in which the participants use a particular keyword. Scrutiny-based technique is also one of the highly recommended text analysis methods used to identify a quality data pattern. Compare and contrast here is a widely used method under this technique to differentiate how a specific text is similar or different from each other. So here is a comparison. Metaphors, false metaphors can be used to reduce the data pile and find patterns so that it becomes easier to connect data with history. And variable partitioning is another technique in order to split variables so that researchers can find more coherent descriptions and explanations from the enormous data. So it's about how we split the variables. Some qualitative data analysis methods. First of all, text analysis. Here you can see content analysis, thematic, narrative, and discourse and grounded theory analysis. First of all, when we talk about text analysis, when we analyze data from various word-based sources, we gain insights about the audience, about the needs, preferences. If we talk about business, for example. And there are, of course, other various sub-methods that are extensions of text analysis. And each of them serves a more specific purpose. Talk about content analysis. Content analysis it's widely accepted and the most frequently employed technique for data analysis in research methodology. It can be used to analyze documented information from text, images, and sometimes for the physical items. It depends on the research question to predict when and where to use this method. So it is a straightforward, we could say, popular method that examines the presence and frequency of certain words or certain concepts and subjects in different content formats such as text, image, or video or audio. For example, the number of times the name of a celebrity is mentioned on social media or online tabloids. It does this how? By coding text data that is later categorized and tabulated in a way that can provide valuable insights, making it a perfect mix of quantitative and qualitative analysis. There are two types of content analysis: conceptual analysis focuses on explicit data. For example, the number of times the concept of what is mentioned in a piece of content, and relational analysis, which focuses on relationships. So here, on the other hand, when we talk about business now, marketing content analysis is used by marketers for brand reputation and customer behavior. For example, who want to analyze customer reviews, we can conduct the customer interviews. We can find directions for new product development. So it's something which is very interesting. For thematic analysis, it's a very subjective technique, very similar to content analysis, actually, but helps in identifying and interpreting patterns in quantitative data, with the main difference being that the first one also can be, the content analysis I mentioned before, can also be applied to quantitative analysis. The thematic method analyzes, on the other hand, large pieces of text data, such as focus group transcripts or interviews, and groups them into themes and categories that come up frequently within the text. It's a technique that actually relies on researcher's judgment. In order to avoid biases, there are some steps, 6 steps. First, familiarization, coding, generation, how to generate themes, reviewing themes, defining and naming themes, and writing up. So it's about a flexible approach, because the data here can be interpreted in multiple ways, and it can be hard to select what data, of course, it can be more important to emphasize. Narrative analysis. This method is used to analyze content which is selected from various sources, such as personal interviews or field observation and the surveys. The majority of stories or opinions shared by people are focused on finding answers to research questions. From a business perspective, we could say that a narrative analysts this analysis can be useful to analyze customer behaviors and the feelings towards a specific product or feature or others, because it provides unique and deep insights that can be extremely valuable. Of course, it has a big disadvantages, and the biggest disadvantage of this method is that the sample sizes are usually very small, and because of the complexity and the time-consuming nature of the collection of narrative data. And at the same time, the way a subject tells a story, you can understand that it will be significantly influenced to his or her specific experiences, making it very hard to replicate in a future study. Discourse analysis, very, very interesting, because it has to do with interaction, it has to do with context. It is similar to narrative analysis, but discourse analysis is used to analyze interactions with people. This considers the social context under which or within the communication between the researcher and respondent takes place. So this focuses on the environment before deriving any conclusion. So this analysis is used to understand the meaning behind any type of written, verbal, or symbolic discourse, based on political, social, or cultural context. It mixes the analysis of languages and situations, very important. And this means that the content, the way the content is constructed and the meaning behind is significantly influenced by the culture and the society it takes place in. For example, if you want to analyze a political speech, you need to consider different context elements, such as the politician's background, the current political context of the country, the audience to which the speech is directed, and so on. From a business point of view, discourse analysis is a great market research tool because it allows marketers to understand how the norms and the ideas of specific market work, how the customer relate to those ideas, and of course, it can be very useful to build a brand name, etc. So, very interesting, the ground theory analysis, just mentioned here about data analysis, but later we're going to explore this. What is ground theory? Is very popular, so we need to know today what is ground theory. Traditionally, we know that researchers decide on a method and hypothesis and start to collect data to prove this hypothesis. We all know about this. The grounded theory is the only method that doesn't require an initial research question or hypothesis, because its value lies in the generation of new theories. So with the grounded theory method, you can go into the analysis process with an open mind. You can explore the data to generate new theories through tests and revisions. In fact, it's not necessary to collect the data and then start to analyze it. Researchers usually start to find valuable insights as they gathering the data. So all these things make ground theory a very valuable method because theories are fully backed by data instead of initial assumptions. It's an interesting technique to analyze poorly researched topics or find the causes behind specific company outcomes. For example, product managers and marketers might use the grounded theory. How? In order to find the causes of high levels of customer churn, of customer dropout. So they can look into customer surveys and reviews to develop new theories about the causes. And when, of course, we apply ground theory when we want to explain why a particular phenomenon happened, then using ground theory for analyzing quality data. This is a great, this is the best, I think, way, the best resort. When we applied it to study data about the host of similar cases which happen in similar settings, different settings, sorry. And when researchers are using this method, they might alter explanations or produce new explanations until they arrive at some conclusion. So here we have a sum up of what I said before about the analysis method, data analysis in qualitative research. Content analysis describes, categorize common words, ideas in qualitative data, in thematic, interpret and identify patterns and themes. Textual, examine the content, structure, design of text, discourse, study communication, how language is used to achieve effects. And if you want today to organize data, first you need to prepare and organize. This means how you will set up your interviews, the field notes, how you will review and explore the data. So examine the data for patterns or repeat ideas. Then we develop a data coding system to establish a set of codes that you can apply in order to categorize your data. Then you assign codes to data. Of course, as you go through your data, you can create new codes to add to your system if this is necessary, and identify recurring themes. So this means link codes together to cohesive overarching themes. See here that, of course, we can, it's a possibility to organize a whole session about AI tools. There are numerous AI tools that you can use in qualitative research also, but here you can, for data analysis, for example, Form Classic can be used for both qualitative and quantitative. It's a tool that actually assists in gathering primary data. This is very interesting. Very important. I suggest and recommend this tool for qualitative data analysis is Atlas T. This is not only helps researchers analyze data, but it can also helps guide researchers on what they should research next. So we talk about predictive analytics. This is very important. Many efficiencies of this tool, of this software. And in general, if we want to explore some tools for qualitative research, I can mention how Insight 7, advanced transcription bots, data query, personal generation tools, customer discovery platforms, integrated feedback analysis tools. The first one is a user-friendly tool for analyzing interviews at scale. It automatically extracts key themes, summary, insights, highlights, and sentiment from up to 200 interviews at once, enable, of course, marketing research to talk about marketing teams, develop growth strategies, powerful messaging, reliable content, and other copies. So there is an AI-powered analysis, the data aggregation, automated course insights, actionable recommendation, sentiment analysis, very important, because it measures the overall sentiment of customer feedback, so it can help us understand customer satisfaction, segmentation, and video analysis, all these are great efficiencies. AI-powered bots can join meetings on platforms like Zoom or Google Meet with near-perfect accuracy. Data query personal generation tools. These tools are particularly added at turning qualitative data into actionable insights by running queries on data sets that can generate using buyer personas and can product messages, testimonials, and even add copy within seconds. Customer delivery platforms and integrated feedback analysis tools because they are capable of mining product opportunities across various channels such as Gmail, for example. So what are the benefits of using tools? These AI tools for qualitative research, of course, is automated data transcription organization, the sentiment analysis, as I mentioned before, enhanced data capabilities. Tools can assist in analyzing large volumes of qualitative data, interview transcript, for example, OpenAI survey responses, social media posts, data visualization, word clouds, network diagrams, interactive dashboards, which can help researchers communicate their qualitative findings more effectively. Sentiment analysis, it's very important because, as I said before, we can define the emotional tone or sentiment expressor, and this offers, of course, valuable insights into participants' attitudes, opinions, and experiences. It can help us reduce researcher bias because these AI tools can help can identify patterns and insights that may be overlooked or influenced by human assumptions or preconceptions. And of course, by automating tasks such as transcription, coding, and data organizations can help us significantly reduce the time and effort required for qualitative research. So ultimately, we save cost, and this allows researchers to focus on high-level analysis and interpretation. So all these tools, this doesn't mean that they replace researchers, but they try to facilitate and support their work, allowing for more efficient and insight qualitative research. And of course, you have in mind what's happening now with ChatGPT, for example. We know that we need to have in mind an ethical framework in order to promote integrity and moral values among researchers. So now, a very important part of my presentation has to do with all the types of qualitative research design that you need to know, to learn today. Before this, I can give an example of what I said before, to revise a little bit what I said before. For example, I said that many times a research question will start with qualitative research. So the qualitative research will help generate the research hypothesis, which can be tested with quantitative methods. After the data is collected and analyzed with the quantitative methods, a set of qualitative methods can be used to dive deeper into the data to better understand what the numbers truly mean and then implications. So the qualitative techniques can help clarify the quantitative data and help also refine the hypothesis for future research. And furthermore, with qualitative research, researchers can explore poorly studied subjects with quantitative methods. This includes opinions, individual actions, and social science research. So an excellent qualitative study design starts with a goal and objective. This should be clearly defined or stated. The target population also needs to be specified. So a method for obtaining information from the study population must be carefully detailed to ensure no missions of part of the target population. Of course, the design should ensure adequate methods for analyzing the data. A researcher, I will mention an example. If a researcher wants to conduct a research on the number of teenagers who smoke in their community. So here, the researcher could begin by asking current teen smokers why they started smoking through structured or unstructured interviews. This is qualitative research. The researcher can also get a group of current teenage smokers and conduct a focus group to help brainstorm factors that may have prevented them from starting to smoke. This is also qualitative research. In this example, the researcher has used qualitative research methods, so interviews and focus group, to generate a list of ideas of why teens start to smoke and factors that may have prevented them from starting to smoke. And next, the researcher compiles this data. The research found out that hypothetically, we could say peer pressure or health issues or cost, rebellious behavior, all these might increase or decrease the likelihood of teens starting to smoke. So the researcher creates a survey asking them, the team participants, to rank how it is important each of the above factors in either starting smoker for current smokers or not smoker for current no-smokers. And this survey provides specific numbers, ranked importance, for example, of each factor. And this is a quantitative research tool. The researcher can use the survey results to focus efforts on one or the two highest ranked factors. Let us say for the researcher, for example, found that health was the primary factor that kept teens from starting to smoke, and peer pressure was the primary factor that contributed to teens starting smoking. So the researcher can go back to qualitative research methods here to dive deeper into those for more information. So the researcher can conduct interviews, focus group, about what types and forms of peer pressure are commonly encountered, where the peer pressure comes from, where smoking starts, hypothetically we can say that he finds that peer pressure often happens after school, at the local teen hangouts, most in the local park, and hypothetically finds also that the peer pressure comes from older current smokers who provide the cigarettes. So researchers would further explore this observation made at the local, for example, teen hangouts, this is qualitative research, and takes notes regarding who is smoking, who is not, and what observable factors are at play for peer pressure to smoke. So researchers find a local park where many local teenagers hang out and see that the smokers tend to hang out in a shady area of the park. So the researcher notes that smoking teenagers buy cigarettes from a local, for example, convenience store. So all these observations fall under qualitative research. If the researcher returns to the park and counts how many individuals smoke in each region, the numerical data would be quantitative research based on the researchers' efforts. So they conclude that local teen smoking and teenagers who start to smoke may decrease if there are, for example, fewer the green areas of the park, or if the store does not sell cigarettes to underage individuals. So the researcher could try, for example, to reassess the study areas to make them less conducive to smokers, to identify how to limit the sales of cigarettes to underage individuals. So this way it can cycle back to qualitative methods or of asking at-risk populations the perceptions of the changes and what factors are still at play. And at the same time, quantitative research that includes teen smoking rates in the community and the incidence of new teen smokers among others. So more or less is what is happening with when we combine these two research methods. So, of course, there are many types available for qualitative research design, but here the most common, the most popular, first of all, is phenomenology. Phenomenology is the study of phenomena, what phenomena mean, and all the study of particular phenomena. Usually, these two grounded theory I mentioned before, phenomenology, are pretty similar, but the differences can be seen upon careful examination. Phenomenology looks to investigate experiences from the individual's perspective. So it is essentially looking into the lived experience of the participants, aims to examine how and why participants behave a certain way from their perspective. On the other hand, grounded theory aims to develop a theory for social phenomena through an examination of various data sources. Phenomenology focuses on describing the essence, as we say, tries to grasp the essence of a lived experience or explain an event or phenomena from the perspective of those who have experienced it. In both phenomenology and ground theory, we collect the views and of a number of participants. However, instead of theorizing from these views and generating a theoretical model, this happens in grounded theory. In grounded theory, remember, we construct models, we theorize. On the other hand, phenomenologists describe what all participants have in common as they experience a phenomenon, for example, grief or anger. And in this way, phenomenologists work much more from the participants' specific statement and experiences, rather than abstracting from the statements to construct a model, as I mentioned before. So the basic purpose of phenomenology is to reduce the experiences of persons with a phenomenon to a description of the universal essence. On the other hand, we can mention about ethnography, because we can talk for hours, but I know that's stick to the time. Ethnography involves how we study and we understand the culture, beliefs, and practices, and the social interactions in a community or a specific group. So researchers actually, what they're doing, they immerse themselves in the participants' natural environment for a certain period, and they conduct participant observation, they conduct interviews, and document analysis to gain in-depth understanding of the culture. Ethnography as research design originates in social and cultural anthropology and involves the researcher being directly immersed in the participant's environment. And through these immersions, what happens? The ethnographer can use a wide variety of data collection techniques to produce a comprehensive account of the social phenomena that occurred during the research period. So the researchers' aim with ethnography is to immerse themselves in the population and come out of it with accounts of actions, behaviors, etc. So it's direct involvement with the target population is the greatest benefit of this research design. Grounded theory, you need to know this, is actually an approach where researchers aim to develop theories. As I said before, we construct models and frameworks grounded in data through a constant comparison and analysis of collected data. We can identify categories, concepts, and relationships in order to generate a theory. This is, as I said before, you need to know the differences between phenomenology and ground theory. On the other hand, grounded theory has some steps that you may know, what we call open coding. The first step, actual coding and selective coding. With open coding is when you try to take your textual data and we break it into discrete parts. With axial coding, when you draw connections between your code, and selective coding, when you select one central category that connects all the codes from your analysis and captures the essence of your research. So first of all, with open coding, what is happening is the first common step of your in the analysis of your qualitative research is used as the initial coding pass in grounded theory. At this point, you have started collecting qualitative data, such as transcription for interviews, for example. So with open coding, you break the data into discrete parts and you try to create codes to label them. Open coding is meant that you open up to new theoretical possibilities as you first engage with your qualitative data. And the purpose of breaking up your data and label them with codes is to enable you as a researcher to continuously compare and contrast similar events in your data. The axial coding, the second step, Here, after you have broken the data up in the first step of that we mentioned before, with actual coding, we begin to draw connection between codes, or you organize the codes in order to make connections. And finally, with selected coding, the last step in grounded theory, where you connect all the categories together around in one category. And this one category is called core category that ultimately represents the central thesis of your research. So when you should use this open, axial, and selected coding, when you want to follow the grounded theory method, or when you want to derive, to generate new theories or concepts, when you don't want to use preconceived theories to define the outcome of your research, or when you're conducting exploratory research where you desire to generate new concepts and ideas. Another research design, very interesting, is what we call a case study. Case study involves an in-depth examination of single individual group organization specific context. Researchers collect multiple sources of data, such as interviews or observation documents, to provide a comprehensive understanding of the case. This case study may seem similar to narrative research, especially when the case chosen is a single individual, but significant distinctions exist. Many case studies focus on an issue within the case, so individual, multiple individuals, program or activity, selected to provide insight into the issue. Therefore, the focus in case study research is not predominantly on the individual and their stories, as in narrative research, but on the issue with individual case selected to understand the issue. Also, in case study research, the analytical approach involves a detailed description of the case, the setting of the case within contextual conditions, and the presentation that may or may not be chronological. So the case study research builds an in-depth contextual understanding of the case, relying on multiple data sources rather than on individual stories, as in narrative research. And there are some types of case study. The first type is increasing case study. When we wanted to study, when we try to understand a specific case, so we try to understand the case as a holistic entity in order to understand in inner workings, or when we try to understand a more general process based on the analysis of a single case. The drawback of this method is that this can be very risky when we generalize from a single case, always something very risky. The second type is what we call instrumental case study. In this case, researchers' primary interest is how to understand something other than the particular case. So we try to, we study the case in order to learn something more general. So it's more universalistic, and researchers doing these instrumental case studies are less interested in making conclusions that are specific to the case, of course. Another third type is collective case study, when researchers believe that they can gain greater insight into research topic by concurrently studying multiple cases in one overall research study. This is also called multiple case design. And in these cases, in this way, these cases are studied instrumentally rather than intrinsically. Of course, there are several advantages if we want to study more than one cases. First, the comparative type of study is something which is gives more potential. One can more effectively test the theory by observing the results of multiple cases, definitely, and someone is more able to generalize the results from multiple cases than from a single case. And disadvantage could be that depth of the analysis will usually have to be sacrificed because of the breadth of analysis. Narrative research focuses on how we understand and how we analyze narrations, personal stories shared by individuals. So researchers examine actually the structure, the content, and the context of these narratives in order to gain insights of how individuals construct to make sense of their experiences. And we know that one of qualitative research strengths, as I said before, lies in its ability to tell a story often from the perspective of those directly involved in the story. So reporting on the qualitative research involves including details and descriptions of the setting involved and quotes from participants. Narrative research, of course, has many forms, uses various analytic practices. It is rooted in different social and humanities disciplines, and it has many possibilities for researchers. Another one is what we call participatory action research, something that I'm doing with a university here in Greece. This always has to do with social problems. It's a collaborative approach that actually involves researchers working closely with participants or communities in order to address social issues or social problems. How, for instance, here in Greece, in the university, we try to conduct the participatory action research for prisoners in a region outside Athens. So the aim is to empower participants to generate actionable knowledge through a cyclical process of action and change. Another one is a research paradigm. Research paradigms are actually all these norms and standards underpinning different research approaches. Research paradigms are what we call worldviews that actually inform research. It is valuable for both the qualitative and quantitative researchers to understand what paradigm they are working within, because understanding the theoretical basis of research paradigms allows researchers to understand what the strengths and weaknesses of the approach being used and adjust accordingly. So different paradigms have different ontologies and different epistemologies. I can clarify here what is ontology. Ontology is defined as the assumptions about the nature of reality, and epistemology, on the other hand, is defined as assumptions about the nature of knowledge that inform researchers' work. So it is essential to understand ontological and epistemological foundations of the research paradigm researchers are working with in order to allow for a complete understanding of this approach. Positive versus positivism is very interesting also. Here, what is happening, positivism is philosophy which says that the scientific method can and should be applied to social and natural sciences. So positivist thinking insists that the social sciences should use natural science methods in the research. It stems from positive ontology. Positive ontology says that there is an objective reality that exists and that is wholly independent of our perception of the world as individuals. Of course, quantitative research is rooted in positivist philosophy. And on the other hand, post-positivists say that social reality can never be 100% explained, but that would be approximative. So it means that qualitative researchers have been insisting that there are fundamental limits to the extent to which the methods and procedures of the natural sciences could be applied to the social world. Therefore, post-positive philosophy is often associated with qualitative research. Constructivist also interpreted research is a subcategory of post-positivism because most researchers actually invested in post-positive research are also constructivist, meaning what? Meaning that they think that there is no objective external reality, I mentioned before, that exists, but instead that reality is constructed. So constructivism is this theoretical lens that emphasizes the dynamic nature of our world. This argues that individual views are directly influenced by our experiences. It is these individual experiences and views that actually shape a perspective of reality. So constructivism focuses on how reality is not a fixed certainty and how experiences, how interactions and backgrounds give people a unique view of the world. So these differences we need to know today about ethnography, we mentioned before, when researchers immerse themselves in groups, grounded theory, when we collected data to develop and construct theoretical models, with action research, when we try to drive social change, phenomenological research, when we try to grasp, I said before, the essence of a lived experience, investigate a particular phenomenon through how people experience this phenomenon, and narrative research, when we examine how stories are told. Case studies, mentioned about 3 types, ethnography, grounded theory, phenomenology, I mentioned before. Here's some examples for questions about the life experience of an individual, how they evolve over time. For case study, questions about developing understanding about how different cases provide insight into an issue. or for grounded theory, questions about experiences over time or changes that have different stages. Phenomenology, what is the essence of a person's experience about the phenomenon? And community action questions, this has to do with participatory action research. Sociology about grounded theory, humanities for narrative, psychology, education for phenomenology. Unfortunately, we don't have time to analyze this. And finally, the second, last part of my presentation has to do with documents as social artifacts. I try very brief to tell you that documents actually are social artifacts because enable information to be shared, stories to be presented. They are created for a particular purpose. So qualitative researchers must view documents in a different perspective. They are invaluable sources. You can treat documents with very, very different perspectives. They're actually magical uses of documents. They are crafted according to social conventions to serve a function of sorts. They are social facts. They are produced in socially organized ways. They are versions of reality scripted according to various kinds of conventions. And also, we need to explain that documents construct their own kinds of reality. They are sources and topics for investigation. And rather than ask whether a document offers a true account or whether it can be used as valid experience, it is more fruitful to ask questions about the form and function of documents themselves. Inside the documents, there are also intended meanings, what we call authorship and the function of documents, received meanings recognizing the importance of readership and audience and the ways in which documents are interpreted by intended audience. Documents also have narrative structures that are imbued with cultural ways of telling. So we need to here to distinguish between what documents look like, the language and the form, what they do, the purpose or function of documents, and how they are related. So in the textuality between documents. So in the textuality and authority, how they relate with each other. The audit trails trace each document statement presented in organizational accounts to other documents contained in the audit file. The relationship that I mentioned before, and these documents include the principles of sequence and hierarchy, will form part of the constitutive machinery. This is very interesting. We need to be attentive, pay attention to the ways in which documents are classified and conceptualized. So there are some types also of classification. Primary, secondary documents. Primary, those experiences mentioned second, first hand. Of course, secondary, constructed as a representation of an event by others. And tertiary documents include catalogs, references, and great literature. And all this classification means that texts also have limitations, especially if we talk about how a qualitative researcher treats news. Here, I can't present all this time. Fortunately, I won't explain this. I can tell you that a media analysis, it's very interesting. The visual analysis also in social sciences, which is often overlooked by social scientists, or it is treated as a superficial mode of analysis. How photographs and other visual data also can provide an excellent source for qualitative analysis. The pictures people take give importance, information about what is important to them, how they view themselves and others. And photographs can also, for example, or any other visual data can be analyzed the same way as any other kind of personal document or archival material. The same way, camera or video recording can be very useful research tools in social sciences, for example. Endometologists use electronic devices to study this aspect of everyday life. Experts who have studied the art of walking, or others, people with special needs. So we have video data, videos which have been recorded, produced in more or less a professional way by actors other than researchers, and video data induced by researchers. So experimental and natural video documents, video records situations created by researchers, and other we have a natural setting. So sequence analysis, videography, all dynamic data has to do with the data mentioned before about cyber world becoming more and more complex. We need to take into consideration ethical guidelines such as privacy, security, transparency, how to treat all this dynamic data, volatility of data, and personal documents also. I want to mention that the personal documents have been used throughout the history of research. There are valuable types, valuable sources. Diary, for example, is the most revealing private type of personal document. You all know about the famous diary of Anne Frank and how this is was valorized by researchers. Travelers also often maintain logs on their trips. Qualitative research as an autobiography, for picturing disability, familiar, socially organized practice also. We can see family researches about how the family space is presented. And finally, concluding, I mentioned before about ethical dilemmas, what is happening, especially we want to use AI. You need also to use to ensure that you have informed consent letter, how new technologies impact the practice of this ethical research. You need to consider, I mentioned before, the case of social profiles from social media. What is happening here is always to be in contact with ethics committees, and to make questions like, is this method adequate? Is the knowledge produced relevant enough? Ethical concerns, to explore the ethical concerns about big data sets. We have a framework here of David Resnick. This framework consists of principles like honesty, carefulness, openness, freedom, bread, education, responsibility, legality, mutual respect. Very important to talk about the moral integrity of any researcher. And social responsibility, how to pay attention to prejudice and biases. And finally, all these guidelines, independence in research, direct involvement, and for AI, human agency, transparency, diversity, no discrimination, societal, environmental well-being, and compatibility. So thank you very much for your attention. So any question?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you, Professor Rania.
But I tried to cover many
No.
aspects.
It was a wonderful presentation, Professor Rania. Thank you so much. And if any questions, participants, you may ask to Professor Rania. You can raise your hands. I will unmute you. The topics, actually, it was really relevant. Everything is relevant to the topic, Professor Rania. It was a very wonderful and insightful presentation from your side. So, please, before Ritesh Gautam, please unmute. Mr. Ritesh Gautam.
Yes, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I have a question related to the sampling procedure. For example, I am conducting a qualitative study. So my sample is I am conducting a focus group interviews. So is it necessary or mandatory in qualitative research that the sample that I have constructed should be the representation of the population, or it is based on opinions or their perceptions? That is my question in qualitative research particularly.
In qualitative research, yes, it's not mandatory. No, it must be like this. You have to something like this. So how do you use this with your focus group, you said? The sampling. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I have made criteria. On that basis, I am taking participants. I am choosing participant on that basis. It's a purposive sampling or a mixture of criterion based and snowball type sampling method I'm using.
You can use a mixed methods, as I mentioned before, many types of proposal sample or criterion sample, multi-mix method.
Oh, yes, mixed. Yes.
According to the research objective that you want. It's time.
Yes.
You can
Oh.
start from a proposed sample, then you can go to focus sample.
Oh.
You can follow the mixed method, and this is the best, I think.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'm doing a mixed method research methodology. So
Thank you. Thank you,
thank
Mr.
you.
Ritesh.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you, ma'am.
thank you. Any more questions? So before I invite Dr. Aarti for formal vote of thanks, I request everyone, every participants to please, once again, to please keep your videos on so that we can take some screenshots. So Dr. Aarti, I request Dr. Aarti Chopra for the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the organizers. Dr. Aarti Chopra.
Thank you so much, sir. So I am really grateful to Professor Rania Lampou from Greece for this comprehensive, extensive, elaborative presentation on qualitative tools of research methodology. Ma'am, we are really grateful on behalf of the organizers, Nirwan University, Jaipur and Inspira Research Association. We are really grateful for this very, very beneficial and very insightful presentation. You have told us the key steps of qualitative design process. You have also told us the difference between the attributes of qualitative and quantitative research methods. Not only this, but you have also focused on the ethical considerations in the absence of numeric data, how ethical considerations have to be taken care of. And also you have given the best AI tools for qualitative research. And ma'am, in the researches of social sciences, as we come from commerce and management, so in the field of social sciences, qualitative research has its own significance, has its own importance. So thank you so much for this very comprehensive presentation. We are really grateful to you for accepting our invitation and enlightening our participants. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much. And don't forget about the ethical guidelines I mentioned before, because if we use AI tools at the same time, we need to be ethical researchers. This is...
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Aarti. Thank you so much, Professor Rania, once again. Thank you so much, all the participants.
And sir, we have Professor Modi, Professor Mehta also with us. So we'd like to acknowledge them. And tomorrow also we have...
the invitation.
So we have very insightful sessions in the coming 5 days also. So I would request all of you to kindly fill the feedback form. That will be a mandatory thing to get your certificate. And also I remind you that at the end of the 7 days FDP, you'll have an assignment which will be made out of these 7 days sessions. So you'll have to attempt it in order to get your certificate. Thank you so much to all the participants who have joined us till this late. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we will meet tomorrow again on a very interesting topic, hypothesis, references, and citations by Dr. Ajay Kumar Chauhan. Thank you so much.